we live? All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rupa. I'm serving as your president for 2012 and 13. Welcome to our first streaming of TOM4. I have here a room full of team of officials as well as observers. If we can just all say hi.
Hi.
We really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this really important topic about IFMSA reform. So what we're going to do is sort of share with you the few different topics that we've talked about, a little bit about what we started the day with in day one, and then going through what the process has been in the last few days, and sort of wrapping up with what our outcomes will be. So IFMSA reform, we started with talking about what is the definition, and we felt it was really important to make it clear that the aim is not to be radical, but it's really about linking, coordinating, collaborating, and integrating our ongoing efforts, which are already happening in some of our small working groups or task forces, but also many other topics which have been opened but might be internal small working groups on. So really reform is about coordinating, integrating, and linking. And the reason that we said that we need reform is primarily because IFMSA has a lot of different needs. Next slide.
You can't really hear you with the headphones.
All right, technical difficulties. So why? Well, IFMSA is falling apart. That's not exactly the case. What we really wanted to say is that there are many areas of IFMSA that we can do much more with, and reform is really about taking things to the next level and addressing the needs of IFMSA. We had a debate at this point a bit about, thinking about NMOs, what NMOs specific needs might be, what our members' needs might be, and also really thinking about who do we serve, who are we trying to reach? Is it the medical students? Is it our NMOs? And sort of trying to link the why to that broader picture. So we discussed briefly a little bit about the NMOs perspective. This has been already shared with you on the server. So what are their objectives? We identified a few areas. We broke up into small working groups and brainstormed that our objectives are about federation of the agenda, setting it for global challenges, being responsive and proactive to new global challenges, maximizing the efficiency of IFMSA's unique global network to all medical students in the world. We talked about sustainability, especially concepts of financial stability, and as well looking at sustainability for our meetings and GAs. We talked about maximizing team of officials' productivity and outcomes, as well as clearly defining vision and mission. Additionally, identify an IFMSA structure that serves our vision and mission, institutional strengthening, memory, priority setting, and final commitments and outcomes. So for us, these are really core, and what you'll notice is that an emerging theme was always really linked to the vision and mission and being outcome oriented and strengthening, looking at productivity, and trying to bring all the different actors together and see, again, what is our global priority. So these were some of the objectives that NMOs raised. We provided this on the server, and we also discussed that. We also had a session on fears and concerns, and those were where we just openly shared clear limitations, spending a lot of energy, and no outcomes. Again, really, the concept that was emerging often was related to outcome-oriented and lack of clarity. So we really want to bring everyone together. We want it to be an inclusive process, and we really want to reach outcomes. These were some of the concerns that NMOs expressed. We also discussed these ones. And this is what has basically set up our overall approach to saying, okay, we've guided ourselves on our goals, our objectives, these are our fears and concerns, and this is what we sort of want to reach. And then we started to really enter the TOM agenda itself. And the way that TOM was formulated is in think tank style, so we broke up into a variety of small working groups. There were 4 large tracks. One was focusing on overall TO structure and looking at team of officials as TO structure, their work and collaboration, and looking at reporting, monitoring, and feedback. Then we ended that day and we had more open space and discussed topics such as ethical guidelines. And then on day 2, we proceeded to have 2 more rounds of discussions. Again, the broader topics were institutional strengthening. We covered topics such as institutional memory, ethical guidelines, financial reforms. Then we entered legal review in the afternoon, and then advocacy and policy statement review committee, advisory mechanisms, and then finally we came to today and spent yesterday evenings trying to get some more concrete outcomes, including setting up a skeleton about moving ahead and coming up with a sample AM13 agenda. Today we focused on the IFMSA strategic plan, discussing strategic plan development, impact assessment, issues, priority setting, as well as having an afternoon session on overall GA and RM updates. This was primarily linked to talking about AM13 agenda, and then we had a quick brainstorming round robin thing about structures, financing, and sustainability of GAs overall. And now we're here to wrap up everything. So things get going. Yeah. And so the focus again are what are some priority topics? How do we perceive them fitting into AM13? I wanted to give an opportunity to anyone in the room to also say the summary aspect if you feel like there's some keywords, key phrases that you would like to share with everyone that's watching. We have many great phrases from Renzo, if you would like to share 1 or 2 of your lines.
On that subject?
Yes.
Structure.
Not on structure, just a little bit about some of the merging themes, hopes, fears, the vision. But we had a lot of great phrases. Okay. All right, so this is the first topic that we talked about, which was team of officials. We had 3 different coordinators. We had one talking about TO structure. If you would like to comment on TO structure at all, anything, Liz?
I think there was a robust discussion about how TO structure needs to be a component of reform and a proposal for a small working group.
Great. And then Agostino, if you would like to talk a little bit about TO work, collaboration, and output.
The results of the discussion inside the TOM was more about the communication and the institutional memory, and how to improve the accountability of the members of TO according to the NMOs, medical students, and so on. And there is some proposals about searching for a new platform for communication. We'll pretend to do a survey near the NMOs to know their communication tools that can help us to search a new platform that will improve a lot the collaboration and the output for you. And I think it's summary.
And there's more to come. We also had a session on TO reporting, monitoring, and feedback that Lejane coordinated.
So we focused on 3 main aspects. The first one was about the TO report and how to develop it, modify it in terms of the structure, in terms of the animals involvement, and how to have like a proper feedback on the TO work and achievement of tasks. And last but not least, on how to monitor their work, their plans that they have set at the beginning of the term, and how did they build on it, and they're going according to the goals that they've set at the beginning.
Great. And we also had that morning a session on ethical guidelines. We had a professor that was provided to us by the OC, and Yalte really helped us out with Professor Schussman.
Sure.
No, I say I have to get it right.
Scotsmans.
Scotsman.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Yalte, would you like to summarize some of the key points that emerged from that discussion?
Sure.
Okay.
Professor Schotmans reviewed a draft that IFMSA had, and he also looked at the current guidelines a lot of organizations used. He thought that our first draft was definitely a step in the good direction, and he gave us some pointers to improve and to take into account, such as transparency in sponsoring, such as spending sponsoring money in a good way, and well, several points like that that we then after that also incorporated in the discussion.
And would anyone else like to add some other points? Okay, and that leads us, so we wrapped up that day, and then we moved on to our next topic, which is on institutional strengthening. But during the night, we actually had a really engaging session on ethical guidelines, which Renzo coordinated. So if you could tell us a little bit about what happened that evening and how ethical guidelines sort of became a topic for the beginning part of TOM and has continued.
Thank you, Rupa. In connection to what Jelte already touched on regarding ethical guidelines, yes, we did have an intense and extensive discussion on ethical guidelines pertaining to fundraising, sponsorships, not just the monetary kind of sponsorships, but also all the potential resources that we can get from partners outside. There is a somehow a general agreement that we want this to finish by AM 2013. So please expect more discussions on this in the upcoming GA. We want certainly to enshrine principles of transparency and accountability, making sure that our ethical guidelines are in accordance with the vision and mission, as well as the constitution and bylaws of the Federation. So yeah, that's it. For more details, you'll hear more about this in the near future.
Great, thank you, Renzo. So we were just actually discussing briefly that there's some comments coming up. So what we're going to do is we will take a short round of comments and we'll try to integrate that aspect. And if you'd like to make your comments, we have our official social media coordinator, Agostino, that's available on Skype. For TOM4.
It's better to ask in the chat.
Okay, and then on the chat itself, so he's going to be picking out those questions and comments. That would be the best place to send them. So continuing on, we had two other really great topics. Institutional memory was one that emerged as well. So if someone would like to talk about the institutional memory. Yes, we actually coordinated it. Joking. So we're trying to test if you actually remembered what we had said about institutional memory. See, that's how that happens. So Lejane, would you like to comment on it?
Okay. So regarding institutional memory, first of all, we got an overview of what kind of tools do we have now and why do we really need such memory in the Federation and how it will strengthen our organization itself, and it will help us to keep on track of what are the decisions that were made in before and what are the outcomes, all the efforts that have been made in the past years. And then we highlighted what kind of documents that need to be in the memory in terms of minutes, reports, documents, meeting outcomes, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the discussion, we decided to open a small working group that will look into the current platform, including Google Drive as well as IFMSA.org, as a future platform to be used to save all the documents in it. So expect a call in the server soon about it.
Yes, and we felt there was a core activity for the SecGen to take on, and that that's going to be something that the SecGen is going to. Lejane, as acting SecGen, will be opening that call, and we felt it was a very important topic to continue on. And then we had financial reforms from our treasurer.
Yeah, so basically for the financial reforms, we talked a lot about externalizing IFMSA's financial management as it becomes a greater burden for not only the treasurer but the whole federation. This would increase, of course, transparency and efficiency. But other topics were also touched, as in GA registration fees, NMO membership fees, to come up with different models by experts, and according to these models to start a new financial reform. Other topics were also discussed, as in making IFMSA travels more efficient, not only for the officials, but also for other IFMSA members, students participating in exchanges, and General Assembly delegates. The outcomes will be followed up by myself, and probably we should have some nice updates for the August meeting.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Fabian. And so after that, we had a lovely lunch and then moved on to talking about more institutional strengthening topics. Elizabeth Wiley from AMSA USA, as well as Ashley from AMSA Netherlands. They both coordinated the topic of legal review, and there were a lot of really key topics that emerged from their points. If you guys would like to.
Yes. We got a little bit into depth with the legal review things. We reviewed the topics that were important for the EB to look at, and it's basically things like insurance and those kind of things, and gathering extra help from professional legal people. That's the most important key thing we discovered, and that's the timeline, and the people that will be working on it will be the EB itself, and of course with the help of the NMOs that are in the country, the Netherlands. So yeah, that will basically be it.
So overall, we walked away saying that legal reform is important and essential, and there's a lot of actual pending tasks that, including the EB has to do, following up on getting an insurance for IFMSA, looking up our status. These are very urgent, key topics. And then we had another different type of discussion, really talking about advocacy and policy statement review committee. Currently, there is a project proposal review committee, and really feel like surrounding the topic of policy statements, how we can provide support to NMOs, but how we can provide support to our federation and improve the quality, improve the coordination, and really strengthen policy statements. The question we asked is, like, should we have a policy statement review committee? And around the group, we really felt, yes, this is the direction to go, is to go with a committee. We felt like the committee should be a 2-year group as well. And Renzo was also participating in the group, so he's going to comment a little bit about some of the discussions we had, some of the debates, and really how we see the direction moving ahead.
Thank you, Rupa. We basically discussed 3 areas. One is the structure and composition of the Policy Review Committee. What are the considerations? We want regional representation, gender equity. We want IFMSA experience, and so on and so forth. The second aspect is the core functions of the Policy Review Committee, from ensuring logical coherence and scientific soundness, and the grammatical aspect of these policy statements. So these are some issues under that function umbrella. And then the third one is the overall process, from the submission of policy statements up to the approval of policy statements in the General Assembly. So we also covered that issue, also the time frame, whether we should lengthen the procedure so that we can provide a lengthier discussion in order to really ensure that our policy statements represent the views of our 1.3 million medical student members. So basically, that's what we discussed.
Great, thank you. More to come with that, and really linking it back to the small working group and involving them on that topic. And then we had another group that was working and thinking about the advisory role and advisory mechanisms in our vast federation that has so many different resources. And Fabian, our treasurer, was coordinating that, and he can comment a little bit about what they talked about and future plans.
Yes, basically, we talked a lot about different levels of advisory mechanisms. We identified two currently present and thought about another three different models we could integrate in the future. This was based on IFMSA officials advisory mechanism, subcos, supervising council members advisory mechanism, and also of the integration of alumni more into this advisory role, which in the future we hope we can accomplish. And yeah, that would be great for our federation.
Great, thank you, Fabian. And another topic that did come up in this discussion was really the database and getting those databases activated and used for alumni and really using them as a resource. And we sort of wrapped up that day and said, you know, there was still a lot more to do. And we continued some of these discussions. We said, you know, all these great ideas are floating around, but now what? You know, what are the next steps? We're sort of itching for much more concreteness. So we had 2 evening sessions. One was a group that focused on creating an AM13 draft agenda, and another group that would discuss a little bit about, you know, formulating a timeline, trying to bring things together. Again, the idea was really to talk about, yes, thank you. And so we also received feedback about, you know, how can we improve even just our overall outputs. So for the next day, we started, we can change the slide. And so the next day we started with a lot more just output-oriented, outcome-oriented type of discussions, shortening our agenda, and really just getting to the core of the points that we wanted. So the third topic was strategic plan. We had 3 small working groups, and one focused on strategic plan development. And this was coordinated by Yelte. If you can share a little bit about what happened and which direction.
In the strategic plan development small working group, we looked at what we had done in the past and how we could improve it, taking into account especially the comments from the 2013 March meeting. And what we concluded is that really the basic document we need to update in order to fully be able to develop a good strategic plan would be our vision and mission statement. We are going to continue working on this through the group that's currently doing this. You'll hear more about that on the server, and the first draft will be submitted by July 1st. Then during the GA, we will work on this a lot, and we are truly hoping that by the end of GA, the GA in Chile, this can be one of our main outcomes, that we truly finished and update this document. Next to that, we also concluded that we need an overarching IFMSA strategic plan, not purely focused on the individual roles of the TO members, and that we will need a multi-year approach in this plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then we also talked about not just strategic plan, but really taking things to another level and really assessing things. We discussed about impact assessment, reporting, and evaluation. Osman coordinated that group. Unfortunately, he had to leave, but we have Jonathan, who from BVMD Germany, who can share a little bit about what their outcomes, plans, and just a little bit about what kind of discussions they had.
Yes, well, the goal of the impact assessment is on a quantity basis, not a quality basis, because we would like to come up with some numbers that we can use when we're approaching external partners or potential sponsors. And that's why we're trying to assess how many medical students we are really reaching. And we're going to do that by a little survey, and we're going to come up with these questions during the next weeks, so we can send out that survey probably by also AM13. There's going to be a small working group on that, which already kind of exists, but we're going to open the call on the 1st of May. Usman is going to send that around, so you're all very welcome if you want to participate. And that's about it.
Thank you, Jonathan. Then we moved to another topic, which really sort of opened strategic plan even broader. It's a topic which has been an emerging topic, priority setting, and this is coordinated, this networking was coordinated by Renzo. If you could share a little bit about what happened and sort of what happened in the room when you started sharing this topic.
Yes, definitely the issue of priority setting is highly connected with the discussions on strategic planning and the discussion on vision and mission. And one of the key points that was raised is we have to come up with a larger framework in order to, emphasize and to clarify the interconnections between these different streams or layers in the way we plan for the activities and the programming of the federation. We talk about who should be setting the priority in IFMSA, and we did some situational analysis of the current structure and mechanisms present. We agreed that we have to uphold the value of inclusiveness, but at the same time ensuring efficiency in the setting of priorities. And we also touched on potential timeframes, whether we should come up with priorities for every year or every 3 years, and how we can also make sure that our priorities as a federation and the priorities of the different units of the federation, whether the regions or the standing committees, are coherent. So those are the kinds of discussions, and we're still developing more ideas on this matter.
Yes, thank you, Renzo. And so we sort of had a lot of discussions, but within each of these sessions, I've just got a sheet that shows me a couple questions and thoughts. So we are going to get to the outcome-oriented component of it. Each of these sessions were framed in a way. We asked the question of, should this topic be on the reform agenda? Secondly, we asked the process, like who's going to be responsible and what's going to be the process. And third, we asked really the timeline. So each of these groups and each of these coordinators have been planning within their group about what is going to be the next step. So we're gonna get to that. So hold on for that component. And all these discussions about strategic plan led us to even something which is core, which we believe should be the priorities to the reform. Next slide, please. And so this is where we felt the core priorities, and everyone is welcome to comment on this a bit, is, overall assessment is really important. Before we really move ahead, or even when we are moving ahead, just thinking about overall assessment. And really key is building vision and mission. This should be something that we accomplish by AM 13. Like at that GA, this is something that we want it to be defined so that it sort of has a key role into everything. And from the vision and mission, we can really have meaningful discussions about updating the strategic plan. Then we can have meaningful discussions about priority setting, and really taking those type of things and going to the work plan for implementation of the topics that are recommended. And the core other emerging theme that we realized across the board was really assessment of the process. We want to see whether what we're doing is impacting IFMSA in a positive way, but whether we also are doing things in ways which are measurable. So really looking at connecting even how we do work. So not just saying vision and mission is one silo, then we have standing committees doing something in another silo, regions doing something else in another silo, and trying to move away from the culture of 1 year priority setting to going to long term. And this is how we felt like we could sort of bring this whole reform to coordinate IFMSA's efforts along the board. Next. So talking a little bit about just again how we see the reform playing itself out. We had a presentation from Miguel and Augustino about what could be a potential way to look at the procedure from a long-term process, really in a level way as well. So briefly, as you can sort of explain this chart, and it will be shared with you, we have a 5-level chart here.
And since we are not able to provide you an image of the structure that we were talking about, just to give you a small perspective, the concept behind the charter involves levels, since even in the discussions that we held during TOM, and even probably any kind of discussion that you might try to have regarding a specific topic in IFMSA, you'll probably notice that a lot of things are dependent upon others that need to be first defined so that you can carry on to another level of discussion. So having in mind the dependence that exists between topics, the idea of the structure and the layout that we have is to divide the overall reform process in 5 levels of assessment and discussions, which would kind of like be the most holistic approach to reform that wouldn't be happening right in the short period of time that we have until the August meeting 13, since in this period we would probably tackle only the things that we see as more urgent, but trying to use this momentum of reform to really assess how can we reform in a holistic approach to federation, we would see different components that could be tackled. On the first level, we would have the basics, which would be not only regarding memory, so everything related to the archiving, the culture that we have in IFMSA, the Alumni Support Division Director, how we transmit the information that we have regarding our history, and also the legacy and commitments that we have, since some of our official commitments sometimes are forgotten. So that would be one of the building blocks of the first level, together with the vision and strategy, where we would define not only the vision and mission statement of the world that we want and the role that we see that we can have as a federation in the world, but also a vision for our own federation, and also the strategy, so the long-term planning that we see that we can have in it, so that we know where we're going. And having in mind where we want to go as a federation, we would then assess our current structure and our working methodology by the environment, the working environment that we have. And in that block, you would assess the working conditions, so financial management, staff, legal scenarios that we have, and also the structure that we have in terms of like the different divisions in terms of the topics, so the standing committees and the regions and so on, and also the regulations that we abide from in terms not only of constitution and bylaws, but trying to adapt them to implement the IOGs and the different levels of regulations that we see fit. So this would all be together like the first level and the basics of an assessment that would then allow us, upon this discussion, to move to a second level where we would discuss the leadership that we have in our federation, having as a basis what we discussed previously, and having that in mind, we would define who are our leaders, so the people that influence our federation, and having that in mind, so we would probably be talking about NMOs, about DB position and the team of officials. We would clearly define what are our expectations from each of these key players and leaders that we have, and having in mind the expectations that we have, what kind of recruitment and what kind of like conditions do we have to have in a leadership process. And on this second level, we would also have something regarding credibility, so the responsibilities that our federation have, the accountability mechanisms, the specific, be as much specific as possible in terms of communicating who has to do what do we have to be doing, so that we can clearly know what has to be done and who is responsible for that, so that the accountability afterwards it's more simpler. And having that in mind, then starting to discuss penalties and rewards in a way so that we can try to create a different culture, so that things that are that have to be improved really are enforced to happen that way, so that we can give positive reinforcements and trying to as a federation motivate things to be better. This would be in the second level. So in the third level, we would be talking about leadership communication. So how does our leaders communicate within themselves as a group and between them? So the communication between the EB, the NMOs, and the team of officials, the communication within the EB, the communication within the team of officials, the means that they do, and so on. And also in the second part, the decision and action that we have in the federation, where we could discuss not only about our decision-making processes and how we follow up on decisions that we take, and on commitments that we enroll with, but also in terms of like the projects that we have and the services that we provide, in terms even not only in terms of projects, grassroots projects, but also advocacy campaigns. This would be the third level, and on the fourth level, we would be then talking about organizational communication. So internal communication to the organization, external communication, and impact assessment, because these would then be built upon the different ones. And in the fifth level, we would be talking about everything, and having in mind everything that we would be discussing, we would be then finalizing the process of the holistic approach, discussing our meetings, and also a matter of trust in our federation. So regarding fundraising, regarding grants, and also support from different individuals in terms of endorsement, such as the board of recommendation that we have. And these would be kind of like the 12 blocks in 5 levels that would allow us to, in an holistic approach, reflect and decide upon the structure that we have in our work as a federation. And we clearly know that it's a very complex structure, but again, we have a very complex federation, and as such, an holistic approach will always be something that will demand some effort from us in order to be able to be as thorough as possible in this process.
Great, thank you, Miguel, for sharing this idea that we have. It was a lot of details of what Miguel said. This is just a structure, and we really want to define it and create a platform with this as sort of the building blocks. Again, the idea is to give every NMO, every TO member the opportunity to comment on all these areas. So before I move ahead to some of the goals that we agreed upon and the timeline, I wanted to answer some of those questions that are popping up on chat. There was one that came for Fabian on financial reforms. It was.
Didn't see any question in financial
Okay.
reforms. It's for institutional memory.
Institutional memory. Okay, can I see that? I'm sorry. I thought there was one on financial reforms. Okay, so the question was actually, are there going to be changes in finances as a result of structural changes in institutional memory?
Regarding the finances, well, it really depends on the outcomes of the small working group. If we're gonna find like some sort of a new platform that is gonna cause like additional financial burden, IFMSA or not, or if we're gonna stick with the current platforms, for example, like Google Drive or IFMSA.org. We really didn't go into that much details because we still didn't form our small working group to brainstorm and find the possible solutions for that. But of course, that will be one of the main topics that we'll have in mind.
Yes, and we have another question from Diego Martins about how about the importance of all of us being a part of the institutional memory building? What is the role of each official towards this goal? So really, going back with institutional memory, we feel that it's very linked to some of the other topics that were emerging about TO reporting, coordinating, monitoring, but really working with the entire team of officials and using the platforms. And there's still much more to come and be defined because our approach is using a small working group for it. Again, we're getting questions a lot about the concrete outcomes, especially on the legal review stuff, any timeline, and any timestamps yet. So would you guys like to comment a little bit about some of the timeline and legal
Absolutely. So in our group, as Ashley said, we talked about a few different sort of action items and sort of outcomes. The first is actually with respect to insurance, which is sort of tangentially related, but the key sort of part of insurance coverage that we recommend that the EB investigate absolutely immediately is the insurance for board members. And that generally covers actually some legal services for situations in which IFMSA is sued or is otherwise, facing legal liability. So that was really a more emergent request of the EB, literally as soon as possible. Second, was to determine and confirm IFMSA's legal status with the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. The documentation on this suggests that IFMSA is properly filed as a nonprofit, but is something that needs to be confirmed, because in any case, in situations in which we're seeking pro bono or heavily discounted legal services, the status of the organization is going to be very important. So having that information is an important starting point, and that takes approximately 2 weeks. So I think our expectation is about a month in terms of timeline for that step. And from there, we talked about approaching law firms for pro bono or heavily discounted services. Many big firms are required, or their attorneys are required to actually provide some pro bono services, generally to nonprofits or to charities. The second was to investigate whether or not any law school clinics exist in the Netherlands, and those are generally supervised law students by licensed or fully barred attorneys who provide services for free as part of their training. So those were sort of the two recommendations to investigate. But once again, the first step there is to actually determine and ensure that IFMSA is a nonprofit in the Netherlands. The last sort of outcome is, I think, a recommendation that NMOs really reconsider the decision of the plenary at MM 2013 with respect to legal review within 3 months of the AM12 situation, as we are quite concerned that that's likely to be pretty futile and to be a waste of money, because the only option in the short term until we are able to secure discounted or pro bono or free services is to pay full price for legal review, which will undoubtedly take several hours. And so I think everybody with any legal background who's looked at those documents, myself included, sort of appreciates that there's not really a very straightforward way. In fact, there may be no avenue to pursue legal action against MSA India or any of the associated entities in with respect to the debt for AM12. So I think that was kind of our final outcome. There's not a timeline associated with that, except just to say that we recommend not actually pursuing that at full cost.
Great, thank you, Liz. Agostino, do we have any other questions?
Yes. It's more about the presentation of Miguel. There is one question about checks and balances, if it should be under ethics committee, and Nomi from Germany replies like ethics committee is equal to a subco. And there is another question also from the Nomi from Germany. Accountability mechanisms, very good, but penalties and rewards, do you have specifics on that? That rather sounds very harsh. And the North from Spain asks, is going to be a document or something with the conclusion of this meeting?
Yes. So there's several questions. We're going to implement the 60-second rule, which we've been using here in TOM, to answer questions. So Miguel will briefly use the 60 seconds. We have a timer. Jonathan from BVMD.
Jonathan.
The Jonathan.
Okay, so regarding checks and balances with the ethics committee, I'm not quite sure if this was related to my presentation, but it would probably fit in one of the working conditions, since it would relate to the way that we work. So we would have to work on that part. But this would be one of the topics that probably Renzo will be able to explain a bit better later on. Regarding the accountability mechanisms, the penalties and the rewards, the idea would be that, for example, one of the ideas that's been going around in a couple of discussions lately is that currently the only thing that might be able to serve as a trade-off would be the budget of an official. So, for example, if an official does not deliver the last report in the end of the term, he wouldn't receive a part of the budget that is allocated to them. So in order to receive the full budget in terms of refund, you would have to do everything that you are supposed to do as an official, for example. So that would be a penalty / reward. In terms of the ethics committee and the subco, it's something different.
So Miguel has highlighted that there is There is a lot. If you want, a few more seconds to wrap up, but
Because there are different questions. I can go one by one.
yeah. But unfortunately, we are running a little short on time. But I think these questions we can try to answer throughout the discussions that are going to be happening on this particular structure as well. I believe there were some questions about accountability. Would there be anyone that would like to answer that?
Yeah, well, I can go with that.
I think just a short line on
Yeah,
it.
short
and then
line
we
is
can move
simple.
on.
The fact is that to get accountability for someone, we have to know what we expect, because a lot of the cases that we have no clue of what are the true responsibilities of someone, so we cannot hold someone accountable if we don't know what they are supposed to do. So that's something that it's like intertwined. If we don't know the specific responsibilities of someone, we cannot say that you owe me this or whatever. So the accountability would be straightly connected to the fair knowledge of what someone has to do, and then try to make them accountable with mechanisms such as penalties and rewards or something alike, so that we know that what needs to be done gets done. So that would be a simple, short explanation.
So Miguel shared some ideas about accountability that we need to keep in mind. So one of the other really concrete things I can see the energy in the room really about concreteness is that there are two things that we really tried to do at this TOM. One is create that plan, that actual skeleton plan document about how are we going to move forward for the reform. And that document is structured in a way where we have a section about summary. What is IFMSA reform? We're still going to finalize it and tweak it a bit on what we really mean by it, and then really going issue by issue components. Agostino can comment a little bit about the actual structure of it, and what our plan to do is before this TOM ends, or within this interval of 72 hours that we're still really in the moment of TOM, is feed in each group coordinator. As you've heard from some of us, we have key answers to both the process and who is going to be leading the process and the timeline. We want to feed that into the document and also create space in that document for those topics that were not covered here in this setting. We still have a follow-up plan on giving space to those topics to be fitted in. So Agostino, if there's
You
any...
explained it very well.
Okay, all
It's
right.
that thing.
All right, great. And then I think the outcome that I think that will make really deliver the concreteness of it is that we have a draft AM13 agenda. I'm going to hand it over to Lejane to talk a little bit about it. It's going to be hard to visualize this, but we'll just say a couple things about overall themes about this draft agenda. Of course, it's going to go through all the input from our team officials and NMOs and everyone else.
So as we all know that the next GAAM 13 is going to be focused on reform. So one of the big questions was how our next GA will be like, and how we're going to fit it on the reform process. So here in TOM, we kind of brainstormed and how the sessions will be like, how's the time like, and how will we have enough time to cover all the reform topics that have been discussed in the past weeks and also in the upcoming months. So first we had the small working group discussion last year where we had animals had feedback in it, like Ashley, Liz, Jonathan, and Yelte, to have the animal input about it, and also that was presented to the officials who are present with us today to see their plans toward the sessions and how are they planning to implement the reform process and the agenda. We kind of have like some sort of a rough draft, but of course this is going to be discussed with all the officials who are unfortunately weren't present with us today, and have the input from the animals and get the advice and the consultation to the OC to see their plans that they have in mind before finalizing it and release it 2 months before the GA according to bylaws. So that is about the AM13 agenda.
Great, and that will be shared with you guys on the server, and as Lejane has explained, everyone will get the chance to get input. It'll go first throughout the TO and then moving to the NMO server. So I'm just gonna, we're getting to the point of sort of wrapping it up. We still have a lot of work in this room to do. We wanted to share with you a little bit about, what we have been doing. We have a few goals that we're wanting to consider for the AM 2013 period. Some of those you guys have already heard about, really about getting that mission and vision completed by then, as well as talking a little bit about some of the pre-GA opportunities that might be emerging. And we talked a lot about, getting some professionals on board to help out with this process too. Because as you guys can see, we had a lot of ideas. We've been trying to get them concrete and outcome oriented. And some of the things that we did agree upon is that we need a lot of consultations. Still need to crystallize this, but the idea would be having one consultation with all NMOs and officials once a month to sort of get everyone caught up to date with what's going on, but then really starting a lot of parallel processes on the different issues that we want to focus on. So the issues that we discussed here in TOM, all of these ones have been proposed to be reform topics. Additionally, we're going to take more from those topics that are not represented in the TOM, so please provide input to that. And I think this is a good place for us to stop for today. If there's any questions, I'll turn to Agostino to see, but more updates will be post-TOM. And I hope you guys enjoyed this session. So Agostino, any last questions?
No, it's just asking for the presentation and the video presentation and the slides. It will be made available right after this presentation in YouTube and in the social media platforms, and we'll try to also put the PowerPoint on that.
And you'll be hearing a lot more about IFMSA reform because we have a video that's going to be coming out, and I know this is a very long process, but our video will be definitely worth watching. It'll be short and fun. And anything else that comes up, we will try to, as a group, we're all very committed to this process. We're very committed, right, guys?
Yes.
Yes. And we're about IFMSA reform, yes?
Yes.
And I'd like to close on a note that this has been really all possible for the first time to the OC that's put this TOM together for us with BMSA Belgium and Yelte and the rest of the team here. Andres is like, you can't see him, but he's right here. And all our observers as well for really taking the time to join the team of officials to make this a truly team officials meeting that's going to change IFMSA. So, ciao!
Ciao!
Bye.